Welcome to the Marion City Council work session for Tuesday, November 7th. Okay, first up we have a presentation on computer crime investigation. Who's?
Me?
Oh. Hello, welcome.
Thank you, sir. I think presentation might be overstating it a little. I decided to give you guys an update. What I'm doing. I'm the computer forensics analysis for the Marion Police Department. As you know, the digital world continues to expand. I think when initially I got appointed to this position, Lance, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the assumption was I was going to be, computers are used for crimes against children, and that's what you're going to do is go after. But as times have changed, everyone's probably got a computer in their pocket or sitting on the desk in front of them. It's involved in every crime. So I think our continued vigilance at the Marion Police Department in the computer forensics area has continued to supplement the great work of our patrol and investigations division. So far this year, I've used the computer forensics and cell phone forensics to investigate narcotics, domestic disputes, robberies, thefts, forgeries, sex crimes, crimes against children. And the amount of data is continuing to grow. I think I say that to you guys every year that I come in here. So far this year, over 10 terabytes of data has been extracted from computers, and over 600 gigabytes of data has been extracted from cell phones. In comparison, last year was 4 terabytes from computers, so almost half, and 250 gigabytes from cell phones. So a lot of these investigations are still open, so I'm going to be kind of light on the details, but I decided to give you some examples of what we've been doing with it. It was actually late last year, but we've been working on it this year. A concerned person brought in a computer that they had seen some suspicious files on, and through an investigation, some search warrants and computer forensics, we ended up having charges filed against the subject that the computer belonged to for possession of child pornography. There was over 600,000 images in total, just in total, that had to be gone through. And I submitted over 1,000 or almost 1,000 to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which I thought looked very bad. And I think it was 49 of them came back as known child victims. So that's 49 people that investigators know that this picture is something that no one should ever have to see or have possession of. So that case is still pending, though. We had a search warrant for narcotics, and you didn't think maybe too much that I'd be involved in that, but as drug dealers often do, they had a surveillance system installed in their house, and during the search warrant, they located a stolen vehicle sitting in the parking lot, and of course everyone in the house is like, I don't know how to get there. So investigators seized his surveillance system, and I was able to go through and extract the video of the guy pulling the stolen vehicle into the car so that they could go ahead and pursue charges on him. Also, we used computer forensics to get video from a local businessman to investigate the vandalism that was happening in the square, in the alley there in Marion downtown. And I think we've got 1 or 2 of those kind of wrapped up, or at least we're able to identify them.
Yes, they were identified based off of your work.
And I'm also using it for our murder investigation. And like I said, I don't want to go into much to the details since that's obviously still pending. I'm also, helping out other agencies: Homeland Security, DEA, Mount Vernon PD, Monticello, Hiawatha, Lisbon. They're all coming to us because a lot of those agencies don't have somebody full-time who can do it. So I'm helping them out when I can. I think the biggest challenge I see moving forward, So I always say the amount of data, it's just growing. Like I said, there were 600 images, and not all of them were bad. But I've been kind of exploring. There's some new software out there that it kind of keeps these databases of known files that other people have seen and looked at and said, oh, you don't need to worry about these, and it just automatically filters those out. So it'd make my job a heck of a lot easier. So that's about all I have.
Say 600,000 images?
Yes.
Right? 600,000. Wow.
Kind of mind-numbing and need a lot of Visine looking at a computer that long. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions?
How long do you have to retain this data? If you're collecting 10 terabytes a year?
So really, in an ideal world, it'd be forever, but it has to be at least until there's no more appeals left for the suspect. So after they're convicted and they've used up all their appeals, then it can be destroyed. But ideally, we'd like to hold on to it forever, just in case something were to come up, because you never know what's on there. Maybe there might be a file on there of a victim that nobody knows who they are then, but years down the road, somebody will figure it out, and we can add another little piece to the puzzle.
And then also, is Marion reimbursed for the time you help the other cities, or what's the arrangement with that?
That's above my pay grade. So
Generally that's kind of a reciprocity type of thing. We have agreements with them, and we'll provide services, and then they assist us as well. So generally speaking, no, but it kind of depends. For instance, with DEA and things like that, we've got agreements with them, and obviously we asset forfeiture of monies and things like that come for our participation with those groups. So not as a direct payment for the services that we render, but we benefit from it. And as we all know, these crimes don't know jurisdictional boundaries.
Right.
So you very well may, for instance, have somebody in Monticello that's victimizing children in Marion and so on and so forth. So to some degree, you just gotta do it because it's the right thing to do.
Right. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thanks for all your work on this.
thank you.
Thanks for the update.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Burke Prouty with Uptown Marion.
Good evening. I'm here to update you today on, or not update, but I guess talk to you today about the Uptown Street signs. Looks like earlier this year, the engineering department did a study of all the signs in the Uptown area. It includes maps of where all these signs are. It also includes little dots. So each of these could be anywhere between 1 and 5 or 6 signs. So when they went out, there were about 120 signs just in these few blocks. We've had a lot of complaints about the number of signs, the placement of signs, the usefulness of signs, the longevity of signs. So here are some examples. This one is one of my favorites. You can only read one of these signs. So we really need to take these down. We'd love to have them taken down before holiday shopping gets really ramped up. Some other examples. This is one of our big pedestrian crossings, and this pedestrian sign is way above the line of sight because of all of these other signs in the way. Also, this one is a speed limit sign that's way above the line of sight. So we'd like to take the majority of these down and get those important signs in the line of sight for pedestrians and traffic. So in doing that, we took the study that the engineering department did and made a full list of recommendations. We went out and talked to businesses about what signs they find important. Do they use this loading zone? Do they like this 2-hour parking? All of those important questions. And then we went and made recommendations for every single one of those 120 signs. So we started off with the types of signs that we recommend taking down, such as no bicycling or skateboarding. The emergency snow route, we've talked with the city staff about how we can remediate some of those signs. No parking from 2 to 6, that just encourages people to try to drive home after they've been out entertained in downtown, so we don't want them to feel like they have to drive home. And then it goes on with some other ones. The second category, we listed individual signs that can be taken down, not necessarily whole categories. And then third, we suggested rearranging the signs on posts to have those important ones like speed limits and pedestrian crossing signs put more at eye level. Any questions on this? This is something that our business community has been pushing for years. This is something that's frankly almost embarrassing with some of those signs that you cannot read anymore, and I think it's time that we get this taken care of.
Just the fact that you put down each picture of each group of signs and then gave that a designation, and then when you did your, I'm not sure what you'd call it, that those pictures were the ones that would be eliminated. That was very efficient, very efficient.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they're listed by location and sign type and the number on the picture of where the sign's located, so that it makes it easy just to take them down.
It made it easy to check and see exactly where all these were, so that was good. Thank you.
How many total signs would be removed?
Will be taken down. So all those numbers listed there are ones that we would recommend. I'd have to add those up. And then on the second page, there's fewer, but
So
still
at the end, we'll end up with fewer signs?
Yes. And the ones that are used by the business community.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing is, if you take down the no bike, no skateboards, those kids are going to figure, hey, it's open season, you know, and they will be using bikes and skateboards where they shouldn't be.
And I did ask the businesses if they saw those, and a lot of them said they don't really see many people biking or riding skateboards in the area. They don't see it as a problem right now. They don't know if the kids even look at those signs in the first place. But in being a bikeable, walkable community, we don't want to prohibit people from biking either. So that was the recommendation, to take those down.
Dan, what's the statistics for how many signs you can read doing 20 miles an hour? Is there could you read more than 2?
Probably not. I think that depends on an individual and the age and a lot of other different conditions. But yeah, it becomes pretty difficult to read all these signs as you come through the uptown anyway. They do apply to different, not all of them apply to drivers, so it's kind of a plethora of different types. So we are supportive of what Brooke is proposing. Some of them are set by ordinance, some of them are set by resolution. We would, if directed by council, we would go ahead and TAC would put together the appropriate legislation to require or to permit the removal of all the signs that are required.
And there's been talk about just completely removing all of them and starting over, and we were for that to start, but after talking to some of the businesses, they really rely on some of the signs, like the loading zones and the 2-hour parking. They don't want other shop owners to be parking there all day, or residents to be parking in front of their shop all day. So some of those are really important to keep, and that's listed in the recommendations.
A lot of the signs are grouped in the code, so I think we can probably go through, and we had originally talked about just doing a resolution or just something to remove all the signs and then go back, but I think we can also go back through the code and pull out sections and get certain signs removed. I'm not sure, like the skateboarding sign, I'm not sure that's supported by code anyway, so different types of things. So we'll work through it if that's council's direction.
Okay, thank you.
I've had skateboarders in the park, in the pavilion that I've run out of there several times. So it does prevail, there are some around. But I said at the meeting, I say again, I like to have positive signs instead of negative signs. I'd like to have signs that suggest you can park here for 9 hours. Or, instead of no, 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 say yes, park here, I just invite people to be part of our city instead of running them away. I do think there are some important signs. Lincoln Highway signs, I think, are important. But we do have, and I know in front of my old stomping grounds down there, we have several signs. I never quite understood why you couldn't park there I got a ticket, as a matter of fact, at 3:30 in the morning one time. It doesn't make sense, So I think it's good that we're reviewing them and seeing what we can do with them, because unquestionably there's too many of them.
Okay. That's a lot of work, so good job. Thanks for all that you and your board are doing in Uptown in general. I mean, there's a lot of great things happening, so thank you.
Great. We can't talk about it yet, but there's some great things coming down.
Oh, good.
Okay.
We always like good announcements.
Yep. You'll hear one at the next council meeting. So.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Jack Rader is next with
It's hiding behind his sign.
I was wondering where he was. There he is. Prospect Meadows update. Some great progress made.
Thank you. Is it okay if I stay back here?
Sure.
I thought it might be a little bit easier to explain where we're at with the project, if I could talk through it on this board. But first of all, again, my name is Jack Rader. I'm with the Prospect Meadows project, and certainly would like to thank everyone in here again for your support of this project and your patience with this project. But I do come this evening with some really good news, and it's been news we've been waiting for some time, and that's that we were awarded a $1.5 million challenge grant from the Hall Pride Foundation. And that was on October 11th, and the main key to that, I think, that I would like to explain is that the $1.5 million is based on us raising an additional $900,000 towards the project, which was money that we had in our pro forma to raise anyway. So it's not anything we weren't planning on doing. The nice thing about it is that with this $1.5 million, they're going to give us $1.75 for every new dollar that we raise. So if you do the math, it comes out to where $900,000, I think, equals the $1.5 million. And really, since that announcement, we've already raised $150,000 of that $900,000, and we really haven't even gone out yet to start the campaign that we're going to be doing to raise the additional funds. Our goal is to have those funds in already in February, so we're planning on a groundbreaking ceremony that we would have in early spring, and that would give them the entire year to build this complex. We're now looking at doing it in 2 phases. And really with 1 year time frame. That's one of the reasons, the phasing. There's a number of reasons for the phasing, but I would think one of the bigger ones is the fact that it will give 1 year will give them a better shot to get those first 8 fields done. So if you look at this would be, of course, coming up on Highway 13 North, Marion being down at the bottom, coming up to the top, and then County Home Road that will come over from there. So the first phase of this, the first 8 fields that we're going to build, would be over here on the east side of the property. Another thing actually, if you go by there now, you'll see excavation is already going on. We're not looking at building any of the fields or anything until 2018, but with the RISE grant and some other necessities that had to be done, they are excavating, which will give them a real big boost to get this thing finished in 2018. But anyway, the fields that we have that will be in first phase are the 8 larger fields. Phase 2 will include the smaller fields, and there's actually 8 of those also. They show some more fields down here, but it just shows that they're, and for a future phase, if we wanted to, there could be more fields that could be added. They'd be smaller ones over there, but they could be added to it. So the nice thing, and one of the things that has changed, I guess it's been a while since I've been here, been a number of meetings and obviously a lot of successes along the way with the CAT grant, the sales tax rebate. But hopefully we've got all the pieces. We still have a few I's to dot and T's to cross, but hopefully we have all the pieces falling into place for the project now. But one of the big things that we've changed since the last time I was in here was on these 8 larger fields, 6 of these are going to have artificial turf on the infield. And maybe 8, it will depend if we do better in our fundraising this winter and early next year. We'd like to do all 8 of them with turf. Obviously, there's a lot of advantages. Back when this project first started, back in 2011, when I got involved with it, turf really wasn't a big issue at that point in time. But what's happened around the country with a lot of these facilities is they put in the turf and they found that they obviously have a lot more success because people don't have to worry about driving 4 or 5 hours into the Marion area and then get rained out for the weekend. But the only way you could get rained out with the turf is if you just had severe storms with lightning over an extended period of time. So it's not impossible, but it's not very likely. And the reason, well, there's 2 reasons we're only doing the infields and turf. One is money, but 2, we've talked to probably 6 to 10 of the facilities around the United States. And one of the questions that I always ask, if you could do anything different, what would it be? And a number of them had said that if they had it to do over, they would only turf the infields and they would spend that extra money in other areas. Because if you design this right, your outfields are going to drain. And they're not the focal point. The key thing in a baseball game, if you go to a baseball game, if it gets rained out, it's probably because the infield got wet. So the outfield's not as critical, but you do have to design it to drain well, which we're confident that that's happening. But again, what it allows us to do is even in the first phase, probably 70% of the economic impact is in phase 1. And the reason it is because now, with the infields turfed, we can play anything out there from a 7U girls softball tournament to an adult baseball game. All you need is portable fencing. So that gives us a huge advantage. And of right now, another thing that's happened, I think, since the last time we talked is we have 1,400 teams under contract before we even open the facility. Perfect Game is one of our larger tenants. They're going to have a number of teams here, but we've also signed a contract with Game Day USA out of Naperville, and they're bringing in 400 teams per year. So it's kind of nice to know, and I think it was one of the real selling points in the end with the Hall Prime Foundation is that, before we even open the gates, there's 1,400 teams per year that are committed to come into this facility. Most of those will be on the weekend because our goal still is to try and work within the community during the weeknights to use that for a lot of local play and then bring the majority of the tournaments in during the weekend. Now, when we get the smaller 8 fields built over here in phase 2, that'll even give us more flexibility. Right now, it's listed to open up in 2023, but we put that there because we wanted to be very conservative. I'm hoping that this second phase could be done by 2021 because we're going to need it. The sooner we can get it, the better. And that's the better for everybody in terms of, its economic impact to the community and fulfilling what we want to do in the community. There are 2 other things here that are real important to us. One is a Miracle Field, and that will be built in phase 1. And that's a field for persons with special needs and disabilities, and we're really excited about that. And the other is we're going to run an at-risk program that was started with the Colonels after the flood in 2008. It's a terrific program for kids who maybe don't have the funding to play. And right now it runs 2nd and 3rd graders with the Colonels. What we want to do is work with them and bring in 4th, 5th, and 6th graders that will have a field, and we already have a sponsor for that field, and that's Optimist Club. sponsored that. Kiwanis Club is really, really, as I think everyone in here knows, been a big help on this miracle field also. So it's got, to me, it just has a lot of, we've always looked at this as four bases. The local play, the at-risk, you also have the miracle field, and then the tremendous economic impact that this facility will have on the community, and I think it's going to be a real plus, obviously, for Marion and the entire area. It's a win-win for everybody because there's going to be nights that we're probably going to need 1,500 or more hotel rooms. Well, if you look at the occupancy rate in the area, there just isn't that many rooms in the area right now. So more hotels would be good. Right now, I'm sure a number of teams are going to be staying in Iowa City or Waterloo or Mount Vernon, depending, maybe not so much in Phase 1 as far as the outlying areas, but certainly when Phase 2 comes into play, that's really going to add to the number of people that are coming to the area. But like I said, even without Phase 2, the majority of the economic impact comes in during Phase 1. So with that, I think I'd like to open it up for questions that you might have that I haven't answered. There's going to be some.
Jack, I just want to thank you for persevering in this endeavor for many years. I know you've been working on it for a long time, and
I had hair when it started.
It's been a real labor of love for you and the people who you're working with, and I know that it's had a lot of challenges and frustration, and I'm just so pleased to see it at this stage. And I think the entire metro area is going to benefit from this project, and we're all grateful that you have led the charge and been working on it for so long. So,
well, I appreciate that. Although I would say that the people that I've worked with, a number in this room, our board of directors, a lot of volunteers have been critical, probably more so than me, to getting us to the point we're at, and they deserve the majority of the credit.
You all do, and we appreciate everything you've all done.
Thank you.
Any questions for Jack?
Obviously the fields you've shown us, what are the other items on the board there? Like are those buildings up on the northeast corner?
Yeah, this would all be future development. The land that we have is actually 128 acres, and we're leasing that for $1 a year from Lynn County, who's also been much like you people in here, are a real key player in making this move forward. Obviously, there wouldn't even been a project if they didn't lease us this land. But this road that will be put in, there'll be road construction here on Highway 13, and then there'll be another lane up here on County Home Road, but there will also be a road that ties those two in. So you could enter one way if you want to and head out the other way when you leave the facility. This area up in this corner, it says a proposed future indoor basketball facility, proposed future indoor baseball practice facility. We just put that on there because there's space there. But I don't know what that will be. I know some people have approached us and have some ideas, maybe what might work there. But I think it's important from the standpoint, we're probably only going to be able to play out here March through October. And March and October are pretty iffy. So if there was, through this, if we were able to put in a big basketball court or volleyball or, I don't know, soccer, whatever the case might be, like I said, we don't have any plans in that way, but the area is here. So trying to take one step at a time here and get this open, because I think once it's opened up, it's really going to spawn a lot of other things. And I will also tell you that this other acreage up here is still owned by Lynn County. And I don't know how much that is, but I think it might be 30 or 40 acres. Now, we're currently housed in the same building that we're paying rent, but we're sharing offices with Lynn County Engineering in kind of the gray building right on the corner. And there are other buildings out there, but not a lot. So I have no idea. Much like this up in the corner, I guess I really don't know what Lynn County's thoughts might be on that other part of the parcel that we're actually not leasing. So there are other things shown on here, though, a lake, a playground. I mean, there are a lot of amenities. Most of those, the lake will be, but some of them will not be in phase one. As much of it's a time issue as anything, but also obviously funding and some other things that go into play with that. One other reason I would say that the 8 fields make a lot of sense for us. I just think that for us as an organization, I was down to Atlanta to see the Lake Point facility, and that's 8 fields. And I walked through there, and I went, holy cow, this is a lot. So I think just from our standpoint, to get comfortable, get our feet wet, make sure everything's running right, I think it does make a lot of sense to do these 8 fields and then add these in. This will not be nearly as expensive because you won't have the road. There's so many things that the parking, all of that's in phase one, but really what you have in phase 2 will be the 8 smaller fields, so they won't even be as expensive. I don't know if they'll be turfed-in fields. They're not in the pro forma as turfed-in fields now, but who knows? By the time it comes, it would be nice if we could do that there also, but that remains to be seen. One of the things, I guess, that I wanted to ask too, and I know you've discussed it a little bit, but when I said that we have some loose ends to tie up or T's to cross or I's to dot, is that one of the things to move forward with this is that we do need to, there's a financing part to this, and I think you've discussed this to some point, but there's a $2.4 million loan that we're working with a local bank in terms of securing, and they're looking for some backing on that $2.4 million. And I think there's been some discussions with Lynn County where maybe the city of Marion and Lynn County could coordinate or work on that together to make sure that that loan, goes through. So I guess I would like for you to maybe consider that or talk at it more in length. I don't know how far that is down the road with the organization, but that certainly would be another key point for us to tie up so we can move forward with this in March of next year.
Okay. Questions?
Maybe you said it, but were those the first 8, are they lighted fields?
I didn't, thanks. I meant to say that 4 are lighted and 4 are not. But in talking with some of the people who are going to be tenants there, they felt the turf was far more important than the lights because a lot of times it doesn't, when the peak season out here, you may lose a game on a field, but it stays light, a majority of the time. So in phase 1, we have 4 lit, and that's what we also have planned in phase 2. It'd be nice someday if you got to the point where everything was lit out there, but again, I think we just got to get baby steps, and hopefully as this thing goes down the road, there can be more and more amenities that are put in. I do think a lot of things will spawn. I really sometimes sit awake at night thinking of that corridor really that starts right here at the intersection, what that could look like 20 to 25 years down the road. I just think there's a lot of potential for some really nice entities. As my grandson used to play a lot of baseball, and I traveled with him and went to I think it was the West Des Moines area, and we'd always go to Champ Sports Bar on Saturday after the game, and I would just be amazed at how many people were in there from Cedar Rapids and Marion in this area, and I'm like, boy, this project we're working on is pretty important because you don't see those people here necessarily, but you'd see them in Des Moines every weekend. So to have that and to be able to bring that back here, not only for the games, but what it brings to the whole community, for the community to grow and prosper. And I think that's important too. So,
Thank you, Jack.
okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, before we get to the engineering calendar, anything on the agenda prior to that anybody has questions on, that it isn't starred? Okay.
Has there been any comments from anybody as far as the fireworks ordinance?
The city website has received I think they've sent me 2 emails stating that they wished we would have banned them, but I've only received 2
I
of
think
those.
we received, I don't know if it was copied to the entire council. I know I received one, but I think it might have been copied to the whole council. One.
I did receive yours too.
Yeah, one email.
So it could be suspended on Thursday and pass?
I don't know.
I mean, as long as there's only been that few in it.
Actually, there were 2. Yes, there was another
were
one.
2.
Yep. Yep. So,
Just to get it done and over with and let people know that this New Year's, it's not going to be an extended time. It's going to be a limited.
yep. Okay. Dan?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll start with number 2, which is the ordinance for the stormwater utility fee changes. I wasn't going to do a presentation. I just want to make sure everybody, if anybody had any questions or anything regarding my previous presentation, we're looking for that approval, the second consideration. We have not received anything, so if there's a interest or a need to waive the rules, that would be okay too.
Dan, did you check on the 75% credit in Cedar Rapids?
No, I did not.
Could you do that for me?
Sure. I'll jump to 3 is not starred, but it should be, so I'll have a short comment on that. Just quickly, that's Alburnett Road. We currently have a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit zone where children are present out there already. Basically goes from, this is Alburnett Road, Echo Hill Road. This is entrance to the school right here, Oak Ridge School. We have added pedestrian beacon and crossing here and one up here. This is Oak Park Circle, I think, allowing these new subdivisions to the west to cross and go over to the school and make their way there on sidewalks. We have installed sidewalk along this area here and down along here to allow kids to stay off the street and stay on sidewalks. The current zone now is 400 feet south of the school driveway to 400 feet north. We're proposing that we extend that to 400 feet north of Echo Hill Road, which would be up in this area, and then 400, and then remain at the 400 feet south of the driveway here. So it would be the entire length. There is currently trail from Adair Drive south to right in this area, and then there is trail up along the northwest corner of Echo Hill Road. So we're just proposing that it remain 45 mile an hour, but extending the 25 mile an hour when children present. There may be a point in time when this needs to be lowered to 35, but we do not feel that that time has been reached yet. So that's kind of where we're at. Because it's so rural, the kids, the pedestrians in general, the trails are quite a ways from the road, so we don't, and there's not a lot of crossing going on, so we're hoping that with pedestrian beacons, we can keep those speeds at 45 and still move traffic.
Okay, questions on that?
So number 5 is basically establishing no parking on the new section of Armour Drive, which I'm glad to announce that it was open today to traffic. We have a few items left yet. That's this portion off of Highway 100. Goes up to, this actually probably should go the other way, but try to confuse everybody. So this new section that we have put in on the Roush property that extends all the way up to Marion Boulevard, First Avenue. A lot of Armour is in Cedar Rapids city limits. We're working with them to get no parking at least on one side of Armour up through their jurisdiction, but we've not really gotten a response back from them yet. But we are proposing, given the commercial nature of this piece, this parcel, and the way the street is laid out, there's really no place to park, so we're proposing to put no parking on both sides.
Can I ask about that project? What was the final dollar amount on that?
It was around 800,000, but that's just a guess on my part.
And then how long has that been, how many years has that been in the works? When did this
We
start?
talked about that when I started here in '01.
Oh, one, okay.
Probably was talked about before that.
Is that black line the city limits?
Yes.
Now, rumor had it at one point that Roush's were going to reopen this and request more money. Did that ever come to fruition, or was that just a rumor, or what?
I think Lon has an update on that later if you want, if you could wait until then. Is that right? So.
I don't know. I don't know if I can wait or not.
And was there any the people that lived up there, well, those are apartments, I think, were there any parking out on the streets before the road opened up, or?
Yeah, before it opened up, they've had parking on both sides of Armour, all the way from the north city limits, their city limits, to their south city limits. So currently now that slab is in the 26 to 28 foot range, wide, and parking on both sides. We're going to increase that traffic volume substantially, and I think that would be better to at least remove parking from one side. We would like a little bit of traffic calming up through there, but both sides makes it pretty difficult. It is 25 mile an hour, so.
So you're requesting to establish parking on one side, because the way this reads, it's both sides.
No, we want to do both sides in Marion.
In Marion.
Yeah. Cedar Rapids, we're asking for a minimum of one side.
Do they have parking available to them?
Yeah, most of those are multifamily, so they have off-street parking required. You go down through there, you don't see a lot of parking on the street at this time.
Okay.
But we'll leave that up to them, to Cedar Rapids. So.
Well, since there's going to be a lot of snow this winter,
Yeah. Okay.
800,000.
So item number 6 is brought on with a discussion from council. There was also some interest by staff as well, but we are looking at, Ryan's looking at this intersection and the age of this intersection, which is really old. We're having some difficulties with structural issues. We're trying to move forward with a study there to get a better look on what the overall longer range plan should be. We solicited proposals. We got 11 proposals, which is much higher than we normally do. Must be a lot of interest out there. What we're proposing is a traffic study, which would look at all aspects of this entire area, whether that's roundabouts, whether that's new traffic signals, whether that's reconfiguration. They would come up with a recommendation that would be presented to council for consideration for another contract that would propose the design and construction. Whether that's the elimination of this signal or whether it may be just the reconstruction of that signal, we just don't know at this time. We are recommending that we approve that contract with Snyder & Associates. Put my glasses back.
Yeah, we received a lot of comments, I think, on that intersection in general, just that it's congested, something about the turn signal.
Confusing.
It's currently, I think, on cycle only. I think the loops are bad on it.
Yeah.
That's right. So it's just cycling. It doesn't respond to traffic.
Right. I think I've passed that along to Ryan. In my coffee event at Hy-Vee last Saturday, a group of people that I talked to, they actually suggested you put a roundabout there. So,
They did or didn't?
did.
Now, if I remember, no. If I remember correctly, that intersection was designed by IDOT. And so this is like the intersection at Indian Creek and 10th Street and 8th Avenue and 31st Street. IDOT designed it. They did pay, there was some payment from them. But then the city had to go in and redo the whole thing at the city's expense. Now, is that going to happen here?
Well, we're not to that point yet. I would not think so. I think that there was federal dollars in these projects there was a change in design during the construction of 10th and Indian Creek, but I'm not aware of any changes here, but this was a little before my time, so.
Well, see, it's
This
not
would not
before
include
my
any
time.
federal
I
dollars.
was there when this got, done. And it's just kind of ticked me off that IDOT says, well, you gotta do it this way or you're not gonna get the funding, and then they give you the funding, and then it's screwed up so much that then the city has to go in and redo the whole thing at city's expense, and that's what's wrong.
So just to kind of scare you a little bit, we did actually a study a few years back through the CMPO that looked at configurations actually at this intersection, and I do not like this one at all, but basically a full size with a mini next to it. Just to kind of get you interested in the project, but these were proposed at that time. Council did not do any action at that time on what was being proposed. We did do some of the things that were done through that study, but it was mainly a use of planning dollars within the CMPO to provide some assistance to the city on some studies. So.
For me, the congestion is really 10th Street coming into that.
Right.
To me, it would be best to close 10th Street just past
10th Avenue.
Where the video rental place is, driveway. Just close it right there.
Yeah, one of the things that has been proposed is to close it here and to push this traffic, but what do you do with it? We did actually, working with this new development here, create a pass-through in this parking lot that some people are using as a street. It's not actually a street, but it gets a lot of use by people that are.
I think it looks like a street.
Yeah.
So people use
and
it.
we meant to do that.
Yeah. I use it.
Yeah, everybody does. I think that's helped the situation up at this intersection, actually.
Well, now, would that roundabout actually be at 7th Avenue and 35th Street?
We don't, the study will tell us that.
Okay.
So we're not going in with any precede, whatever.
He's not assuming that it should be a
Ideas.
roundabout. He's
Well,
just,
what
right,
I'm
he wants to do the
curious
study.
about is how is that going to affect the Hy-Vee gas station?
Oh, well, they use this intersection and this one. There is quite a bit of green space in here, so there is some area to be used.
Well, their plan was to move the gas station back over in the other corner anyway.
Oh, no, yeah, but the problem is, when that first started, the city promised Collins Credit Union that they would not put the gas station there, and that's why that retention basin is there, because they were absolutely adamantly against having the gas station there.
I think the Hy-Vee's backed off of that idea at this time. But,
Yeah.
So.
Well, at the time, that's what it was.
Yes.
I remember.
The intersection without 10th Street or 10th Avenue coming in there would work just fine.
Yeah, and that might be their recommendation. It does come with some difficult decisions because you have to do something with this traffic. And
A lot of traffic.
You get up into a residential area up here.
Mm-hmm.
The visibility at, I'm not sure what that street's called, but at 35th is not real good. There's a curve there and a low point, and so a lot of considerations. But that's what we're hiring them to do. They'll come back with multiple recommendations.
Well, if that roundabout was located more to the south, where there's no buildings on that right now, I would have no problems with the roundabout there. Just want you to know that.
But wait, look,
My hearing aid screwed up. What did I just hear?
let me get a picture of this.
The sky falling or pigs flying? I'm not sure.
Did she say that?
Is
Did
that
you
in the
really
minutes?
say-
What do you mean? Just
Okay.
down?
Well, put it where that vacant
Oh, all right.
lot is.
Let's get back to
right.
business
Up in
here.
the southeast corner, yeah.
Any other questions on
Let's
that?
get back to order here. Okay.
We'll call it Mary Lou Pazur Ave.
So number 6 is just the start of a process to look at access control along the new central corridor. During the development of the policy and the master plan in 2009, we did the whole idea of adding access control to this corridor was because of the need to not replicate what's on 7th Avenue and having all those driveways, all those accesses, having all those rear-end accidents, have all the congestion associated with that turning traffic. So at that time, there was direction to look at this as we proceeded through the corridor. Well, we've come to that time now where in this location especially, we need to address, well, it's actually this entire area. We need to address access and how we're going to handle that. Up in this area here, we use existing driveways. They're pretty limited anyway and did not really cause too much of a problem. As well to the west, we have some residential driveways that will become right-in, right-outs because of the corridor, as you know, has a raised green median through the middle of it for the entire lake from basically from here east. So those driveways need to go right-in, right-out. It does not really create a big impact for a lot of the residential properties. They'll have to go out, do U-turns, or however they just have to plan their way to get in and out. In this area here, we are proposing that we provide a plan to address those issues, especially on the north side. The south side we feel will probably redevelop and create opportunities to create access control as well. Currently, from 22nd to the 26th Street roundabout, there are businesses on the north side, but those currently do not really abut the new right-of-way. The city owns railroad property in between the right-of-way line at this point and the back of those properties. So we feel like we have the control and the leverage to make those decisions for those businesses and feel like we can provide for 2 access locations that will be used by this property at the west side of the roundabout, Lebeda, the car wash, Burger King, Linco, and
Auto Park.
O'Reilly's. Thank you. I can't wear my glasses and not wear my glasses. So what we're proposing is that we would work with each of these property owners and get joint access control so that these 3 properties here would use this access, these 2 properties. Lebeda already has an easement in its new development that allows for the car wash to go this way, but we really feel like the car wash could go either way, but we also don't feel like they really are interested in access anyway. But for us, we would like to at least limit this access and get a policy together that would provide for that. Within my memo, I also stated that east of, what street is that? East of 2245 is the address. Those properties actually do not abut city right-of-way. That's the old railroad property, what the city owns now. So they really do not have established access at this time. So we feel like that control is the council's to have and to evaluate at the time of redevelopment. So we are not proposing any access on the south side to here at this time without redevelopment occurring. So more detail in my memo, but I don't feel like I really need to go through all of that.
So you ultimately you see it as there's limited points of access and then cross easements for traffic between the parcels.
Yeah, we would allow for joint easement through their parking lots,
Yeah.
kind of like we do with Walmart and some of the businesses
cross
out there.
easements.
Yep.
Reciprocal type arrangements.
Yes.
Yeah.
They would use each other's access. All of them have primary accesses off 6th anyway, so it's kind of it allows them to have that frontage on 7th, I mean. They have that frontage and that access on 6th, but it would not necessarily be their primary access. So all we're doing is looking for direction from council that we should proceed with those locations and those acknowledgments and notification of the owners and so forth. So I know Burger King has been after us for about 2 years on establishing something that lets them know what the expectations are.
Okay. Any thoughts on that? I mean, the direction you've outlined makes sense to me personally, but.
Okay, we'll move forward with that. Item number 8. With within your memo, this is Linair, or Lindale. This is Blair's Ferry. On this side, Indian Creek is over here. This is the trail that goes out to Lindale Drive and goes on out to C Avenue. So these properties in here are all either served by, all these properties pump up to this location. This property is not served at all. The church here, they pump up to Blair's Ferry. And this property is now being proposed to be developed as well as the gray ball property here. What we're looking at is kind of some direction from council in that once this property develops, we have the capacity for them to pump everything from this site up to this location and use the system that's there now. Once that happens, we really lose the funding source for the sewer work to be done that would eventually serve this entire outlined area. What we're proposing is to at least get with these owners and see who is interested in participating in this sewer construction that would go up the trail. We're planning a meeting with the park board actually this week to discuss how we would go about doing that. But there are two options: to go to the east and cross Indian Creek and hit the sewer here, or to go across down and then up to 8th Avenue at this location. There's room between these two houses. We're looking at two prices of $351,000 or $473,000. The one going across the creek would be the more expensive one. So we feel like there's a need to move forward with this project. We would do an access or hookup fee for all these properties once it was built. Financing of that is still up in the air yet. We just know that if we can get the businesses on board, that makes sense to go ahead and build that sewer and provide access for them. In the long range, even these people that are pumping up, even if they go ahead and pump up, there's still an opportunity for them in the next years to use the gravity flow to have a better situation where they're not having constant maintenance of pumping and so forth. So I know that funding is still an issue and it's not in the CIP, so there's kind of some hurdles to get over, I guess, to even build the project. But we kind of wanted, because the developers are approaching us on it, we wanted to kind of get whether we just let them go, let them do what they've got to do, or whether we jump in and try to make this happen.
So outline again, if you let them do what they want to do, what is that? That's just
this property
pumping?
This property would pump up to here.
Yeah.
This property would probably not develop. They just don't have the ability to do that.
Okay. So then if we do the project, then what?
If we do the project, we would have to upfront the cost. We would build it, and then as each of these individual properties hooked up, we would charge them an access fee, which would totally pay for the project.
We would recoup the cost of the project through the access fees.
Yes.
Eventually.
Okay, but didn't you say that most of that is already slated for development?
These are pumping up to the corner here, but they are actually, some of these owners over here are the ones that are really interested in the project because they are paying substantial costs to maintain the pump station that they have. So it's a continual problem for them, so they'd really like to pay one big fee, get it over with, and move forward. So all we're really asking is we would contact the owners, contact the developers, see how interested they are. We would get some estimated costs of what those would be for the individuals and see if they'd be willing to sign agreements saying that they would take care of that.
Wouldn't that be the logical next step? I mean,
it is, other than it's not listed in the CIP.
Yeah.
It's not a priority of council at this time.
I see.
So that's our hurdle at this point. And we don't want to work on that unless council is supportive of doing that.
But some of the plans that Ryan had mentioned about doing a tile field type sewer system, would that work over on this far right property?
No. This one here?
Yeah.
No, they've got two or three phases of building that are going across here. And then they're going to add 2 commercial spaces on the front here that could be restaurants. The capacities that they would need, they're going to be pumping up to here all the time. I mean, it's going to be a major, they're going to have to put in a decent-sized pump station to do that. At this time, they could pump or gravity feed over to this corner and then pump back up, and then when the sewer, if and when it was built, they could then hook in and just gravity feed into the system. But they'd like to not do that. They'd like to invest currently in the gravity system and move forward. At least that's been their inclination to us.
So, I mean, what's the estimated amount of time that it would take to recoup the cost of the property? I mean, because one property is already developed, another one is
These are all developed. This
slated for
property
development.
they're going to probably start development in the spring.
And then the rest
This
of
one
it
is final plating right now.
is plating for development.
Right. It could be a year, maybe three maybe. I don't know for sure.
Well, if those existing businesses to the west want to connect right away, then I don't see them being an issue. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, if they weren't, I mean, that'd be that could be years and years and years before. But if they're ready to sign an agreement now saying that they're going to connect right away, then.
And we could, and that would be our next step.
Right.
Was we could go in and see what kind of support we have. We could bring that back to council and see what your support is. Then at that point, on whether we move forward or not.
Especially if the Graybaugh property isn't going to be able to be developed without putting it in, then I guess that's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, I mean,
Done.
because this is an infill type area, where rather if they don't develop whatever their project is for that spot, they could go out and take up a cornfield somewhere and put their project. And this is something I think you want to encourage, which is infill and developing in the already developed areas to discourage sprawl.
And that's
I don't know, there's-
Marion District, correct? The Marion School District?
I don't know.
Oh,
It is.
I don't know. Probably
No,
not.
I believe that's Linmar.
That is?
Well, yeah.
What's your recommendation?
I think we should go ahead and at least investigate it,
Yeah.
see what kind of support we have, see if we can swing it financially. And that would require an amendment to the CIP or amendment to the budget probably to do that.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay.
I would be okay with that, but there's 6 other people here.
I think it makes sense.
Like Will said, if there's people, if they're already looking to hook up to it.
Yeah.
And
They're gonna pay
paying
right
for
away.
it, yeah. We better put it on there and get it moving.
Other questions? We'll probably just do a receive and file a report on Thursday on that, so. Okay, so the next item, number 10, is a motion preparing staff, or directing staff to prepare an ordinance regarding speed limit on 26th and 7th Avenue roundabout. At the previous regular council meeting, the question was asked, aren't roundabouts constructed to slow traffic? My answer to that is no. Roundabouts are designed and constructed to provide for higher level of safety and efficiency that a conventional intersection cannot do and move 30% more traffic. Also at the meeting, accident rates were provided at the time were expressed as high. By engineering standards, they are low when compared to the amount of traffic passing through roundabouts daily. If you look at the approximate volumes of the roundabouts that we were talking about, 29th and 35th has about 14,000 vehicles per day. 7th and 7th has 25,000 vehicles per day. And 7th and 26th has about 20,000 vehicles per day. The average municipal crash rate in Iowa is about 0.8 daily entering vehicles. That's, in other words, 0.8 accidents per every million cars entering the intersection. I looked at the 26th and 7th Avenue intersection, which has experienced 2 accidents in approximately the last year. That accident rate is only 0.3, which is less than half the crash rate of the average intersection in Iowa. So that would lead to the lack of necessity to study that intersection or study that roundabout. 35th and 29th intersection has a little bit slightly higher of 1.3 accidents per million vehicles, or slightly higher, but lower than the 2.27 accidents that were there prior to the mini roundabout being built. So the discussion to remove the advisory speeds and post a slower speed of 20 miles per hour would severely reduce the efficiency of the roundabouts and not significantly improve safety, because there's really not a need for it at this point. Roundabouts are already designed to encourage drivers to drive the advisory speed when necessary. This allows them to drive faster when possible, increasing efficiency but not affecting safety. A 20-mile-per-hour posted speed limit would require all drivers to drive the speed even when nobody else is present. In other words, 24 hours, 7 days a week. By not allowing the traffic to travel 35 miles an hour at lower traffic times of day, the overall efficiency of the roundabout would be reduced to a point where there may be little justification to build roundabouts. All drivers are educated and aware of the use of advisory speeds. They are used in many locations where better judgment by the driver is required due to intermittent higher levels of potential traffic conflict, or terrain that may require changes due to weather or low visibility. Research shows that while traveling above the advisory speed is not illegal per se, it may be considered negligent, whereby liability for any collisions that occur as a result of traveling above the speed limit can be placed either partially or entirely on the person exceeding the advisory speed limit. Engineers are required to address all aspects of an intersection, including safety and level of operation. We always look at congestion versus efficiency. Without this consideration, vehicle and pedestrian safety are lowered as drivers become frustrated and begin to make poor decisions, and accident rates go up. Staff continues to recommend no variation from the standard practice when signing roundabouts, both for consistency for the user and also due to the concerns regarding potential liability the city may incur by not following it. Council needs to make informed decisions regarding traffic and pedestrian safety. Otherwise, overreactive changes may be made in response to uninformed suggestions may not fix current perceived problems and may create more severe congestion and accidents. At minimum, I would require that, or request that, or recommend that we would at least study these intersections, these roundabouts, and make sure that what happens there doesn't create more problems, not less problems. Questions?
You know, even the citizen who brought that forward, even he admitted that they're doing their job. They are working in reducing fatalities and severity of injuries and those kinds of things.
Right.
You know, I had suggested that we possible
Yield sign.
the yield
Right.
signs. I mean, that's one suggestion I have. The other one up here on 7th and 7th especially, I wonder if the directional arrows in the pavement, if they could be earlier, it might help with people being in the right lane. I just think some of those little tweaks might alleviate some of the issues.
Yeah, and we've looked already. The mayor had seen where it actually is optional within the SUDAS, the painting of yield emblems, not emblems, but the word yield, on the pavement in front of the pedestrian crossings in each of the approach lanes. We've already looked at that. We've started to get quotes for that. It's about $7,500 to do that on all 5 roundabouts. We think that's probably a good solution. We've also, we're kind of working through these roundabouts. You know, we want to make them work. We want to make sure that they're working as good as they can. We know they work, but I mean, so we are also looking at westbound by AutoZone on 7th Avenue. We're going to put an additional sign prior to the 31st intersection that says through traffic, use right lane. Gives people a better opportunity to try to get over to that right lane before they end up stuck at that intersection at a red light.
Yeah.
We feel like, as I've observed, people get in that left lane and then they don't have time or can't find a space or a gap to get around. So I have seen people go around the roundabout and get out that way. But we are looking at modifying them. I think that the west, the 7th and 7th roundabout, the eastbound through 7th Avenue through lane. We're looking at extending possibly that, I actually have that island. Thought I brought that. Well, where 6th Avenue comes up to 7th, we're looking at extending that island, which would force people, if they don't merge, as they're eastbound in front of Country Kitchen, if they don't merge to the left lane like they're supposed to, they would have to take 6th Avenue. We want to force that action because those individuals are trying to merge back into traffic, into the 7th Avenue traffic, which they're not supposed to do. So we're trying to figure out how to make that happen.
What about if you're heading 7th Street through, it's heading south? If you extend that,
7th Street.
so if I'm coming from 8th, heading to 6th, going through the roundabout,
Oh, okay.
because I take that daily.
That shouldn't cause a problem because we would extend.
Not going to extend it far enough down that it's going to
No.
affect the through traffic.
Sure, I made a print of that, but I guess there we go. Eli brought it. So one of the major problems we have here is this traffic coming in the right lane is supposed to stay right, and eventually when 6th Avenue is constructed and through traffic, about 80% of this traffic will take the right and go down this way. They'll stay on the 6th Avenue corridor. There'll be lots of reasons, whether that's speed, whether that's congestion, whether that's visibility, whatever. We're thinking that if we extend, at least temporarily extend this island up so that this lane is narrow, that this guy comes up here, he's going to have to make a decision that he can't get back in there, so he's going to have to go to the right. It's kind of a severe
But I just wonder if another
fix, but
I just wonder if another arrow earlier, might not get people to be in the right lane.
yes.
Because by the time they see that arrow, it's almost too late to.
Yeah, it's probably true. There's a couple signs back there, but the one we did on the east one where we actually pushed everybody, that has really helped, I think, that merge requirement. The problem we have here is these two lanes do different things, but yeah, we could look at do some additional painting. We've even looked at doing some words, as far as, sometimes when you enter an interstate, it'll say 75 south or 75 north or something, trying to do something like that. The problem is that's an ongoing maintenance issue, and with our, you can get away with that down south, but here, where we have snow plows and so forth, it's a real difficult situation. So.
Yeah.
But we're open to suggestions.
So then what is the motion then?
I guess I'm asking, council directed staff to put together an ordinance providing for those 25-mile-an-hour speed limits.
Oh.
I guess for us, we're asking council to not do that. We're recommending that does not go forward. So at the direction of council, we have added that motion directing staff. I guess our request would be that you vote that down.
Well, from my perspective, again, I'm just one of 7 people up here, but from my perspective, you have the engineering degree. I don't.
I did have one question. Have we considered a no left turn on 6th? You got your trains, you get somebody trying to turn to the left on 6th, a half a block from the roundabout. So all of a sudden now you got these people going over here.
Are you
He
talking
turns to the left.
You
and
talking
now,
back here, Paul?
Yeah.
6th Street.
Go back where you were.
By Dunkin'
Oh,
Donuts.
here?
Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh,
Dunkin' Donuts.
oh, okay.
Corner.
Oh. I don't know why it doesn't want to do that.
Because traffic all gets in the right lane with somebody turning to the left, then they want to go straight. Well, then the guy turns to the left, and then you got people going in there. So now you got all these cars in there that have to go, or have to go on 6th.
So they're blocking this lane and forcing them around.
Yeah.
The other problem we trying to address here is the plan is eventually to this go to 3-lane. This will be repainted as 3-lane with bike lanes. We have not proposed that project yet, and it's not in the CIP. That would allow for that turning action that you're talking about to stay, and then everybody that comes through here would be in one lane, and they'd make a decision to go left or right. That project would solve a lot of that problem. We just haven't had the opportunity to work on that project yet.
It's just so close to the roundabout there.
Yeah, and we could do that. I don't know that.
I don't know either.
I mean, I'm not sure people will adhere to it. That's the problem.
Probably not.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying is that they would swerve out around here and all of a sudden they would find themselves in the right lane. And the best thing to do, I mean, if we really want to fix it, is to merge all the traffic into one lane here and then make them go this way or this way. That raises
then they get in, they could decide which way they want to go.
Yeah, it raises the congestion. It may increase rear ends. We could try it and do something. We put bollards in there that would merge all the traffic to the inside lane and then allow them to come back out. I mean, that's a pretty severe solution, but if we continue to have problems, we're not having an inordinate amount of accidents here, actually. People are frustrated. People are a little scared. People are still getting back into where they need to be without getting into accidents. So
I think you should try the less severe solutions first with the painting, more painting on the pavement and that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I guess my feeling is as long as you're trying to tweak things to see if it works, we always have the option of changing the speed limit. It's not like it's foreclosed forever. I think it's worth trying these other things first. If you're telling us that it's really not recommended to change the speed limit, that it's going to it's going to be counterproductive to the whole purpose of having a roundabout. Like I said, you have the degree. I don't. I have to defer to your expertise, and that's my feeling on it.
Congestion causes accidents. There's no question about that. And I think going to 20 mile an hour in there 24/7 will create more accidents. They won't be severe because we've done away with those with roundabouts, but it really will create a condition where people will become a lot more frustrated. I know that even here, where we've done 20 mile an hour in here, you don't see anybody driving 20 mile an hour in this stretch.
Just me.
If I was to do it over again, I would probably move that 20 up into here somewhere because nobody, hopefully the police aren't ticketing for it, but that transition from here to here, nobody's driving that 20.
I think that's my biggest concern anymore of that intersection or that roundabout. Like I said, I take that multiple times daily to and from work, and there's a lot less people in the right lane trying to go on 7th anymore. I think people are figuring that out finally, but it's people speeding through there, and especially going westbound, coming from uptown, coming down the hill, and they're just flying through the roundabout.
So the yield sign might help with that.
Yeah, and I think it'll help with any accidents or way it functions. But once again, as I said at the last meeting, speed is a function of environment. It's not, you can sign it all you want, and they can be out there writing tickets day in and day out, but people are not going to do that speed limit unless it feels like you should. And that's the problem with here, is you approach this at 35 mile an hour, and you see that 20 mile an hour sign, it's like, what's this all about? So, but if you look at roundabouts, I mean, this one is, I would say, not as severe as some, but if you look at a lot of our other roundabouts, this whole action here of the having to swerve right and swerve left is supposed to slow traffic. And it does with a lot of drivers, especially since you have other interacting vehicles coming this way. The environment is supposed to do that. I think the 20 is just a congestion that is going to affect everybody all the time, and people will still fight it.
I still have a problem with coming from the south up north on 7th Street, because there is that barricade there that does not allow you just to go straight into Country Kitchen. You have to go up 6th Avenue a ways and pull a U-ey and then come back. And it's very inconvenient.
One of the big decisions that was made early on with this roundabout design was the ability or the interest to limit traffic using 6th Avenue down here. This is residential. This used to have a lot of vehicles on it, with accidents included, speed, a lot of tickets written. They were all traveling 35, 40 mile an hour.
Yeah.
One of the big decisions was this configuration to stop that. So it has some downsides to it, and I totally agree with what you're saying. I mean, it's not illegal to go up here and pull a UE here, I think, by code.
No, but
you
I
pull a
just
UE,
ignore it and just go down the runway on the one-way street.
go down farther. I think the code
But I'll bet that-
only prohibits U-turns in lighted intersections, in signalized intersections.
I'll
in
bet that
Marion, so-
neighborhood is appreciating the reduced traffic.
Yes, yeah. So, anyway.
Okay, so
You didn't
are
do
you
that.
looking for direction on whether to keep this motion on the agenda or remove it, or what's?
Well, we can do two different things. You want to direct me to just take it off? I can take it off on Thursday, and we'll respond to Mr. Knutson as far as what council has action has directed staff to do. Or we can have a formal action on Thursday night that would vote it down if that is council's prerogative.
I think we should just take it off.
I would say take it off
I guess,
for now.
I guess, because then that leaves it as an option, you know, if the tweaks you're gonna make, the things you're gonna do are not gonna work, you know, it leaves it as an option, you know. and
Okay,
it's
we'll
not
do a
Totally foreclosed.
We'll do a motion to receive and file the staff report, and then go from there. Everybody good with that?
And then while we're talking about roundabouts, just so everyone in the audience here and that's listening at home eventually, roundabouts are still intersections and you still need to use your blinker.
Either way.
Yes.
So use your blinker,
Oh, yes.
your turn signal. Nobody uses turn signals in roundabouts, except for me. Oh, yeah.
No, I do.
And
I
Nick.
do.
Oh, good. So just to remind everybody, use your blinker when you're turning in the roundabouts.
I do because Lon told me I should be, and
Thank you, Ron. That was my public service announcement of the day.
Roundabouts force people to be a little more courteous than the average intersection. You can go through a signalized and not care about anybody else, really. You really have to think about the other driver in a roundabout, but anything you can do to help the other driver in the roundabout with you is...
I think the amazing thing about them, and I was with the mayor at Hy-Vee a week ago, those folks, you didn't hear any complaints. You know, had that been a year ago, we would have had a lot of complaints, but I think people are getting used to
I
it.
receive many more positive comments than negative on them. You know, some people refuse to try them, but you know, but really, there's many more positive comments.
Yeah, when you look at the accident rates, they've really gone down at those intersections. They might be a little more confusing, a little more, people might be a little more scared of them, but I'll tell you, safety-wise, they're really, really helping, and efficiency, so. Thank you, unless you have other questions.
Okay.
You didn't do 12.
Turning over the
do 12.
gavel to
Didn't
Mayor
do
Pro
12.
Tem for the rest of the meeting.
Thanks, Mayor.
Oh, sorry. That's a small, very small item. It's only 80,000. Previously, council had directed staff to look at the crossing, the overhead utility crossing on 14th Street at 6th Avenue. You directed us to get with Alliant to get a contract together to do that undergrounding. That's what this contract is. We're just asking for approval of the contract. That's an amount not to exceed. We do pay those up front with Alliant, and then they bill us if there's any overage or underage on it. So, questions?
Well, actually, considering how busy that street is going to become, underground would be better because it wouldn't tie up lanes trying to repair the overhead stuff.
Yeah, and it's because of the configuration there, they need to put in transformers and everything on both sides. That's why the expense is a little higher than probably average, but they've explained to us what the work has to be done, and we understand what the need is there, so.
Will it go in and out about where the poles are now?
No, they'll actually go farther out.
It'll flutter out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will be overhead on 14th South and overhead on 14th North. It'll just go down during the corridor, and then come back up again.
Okay.
Speaking of which, these outages, there was a power outage, a week ago Monday? And it was like for 10 minutes maybe. And I don't know what caused it, but the neighbor came over and said, I don't have electricity. I said, I do. Good old generators.
Yeah. It was only 10 minutes, so that's not too bad.
Any questions? Other questions for Dan? Thank you.
Thank you.
I said I'd rent out space on my floor.
Oh, planning.
Thank you. On the agenda, on the first items number 3, 4, and 5 are some final plats. And I'm not going to go through them. You guys got an information in your packet, but I do want to just let you know with the approval of those final plats, you're looking at Gemstone's additions, 4th edition. There's 7 single-family lots and 1 duplex. Glenrock Farms is 36 single-family homes, and Briargate is 16 single-family homes and 35 condominiums. So sometimes when we get a big push of those, I like to point out how many lots and development things that are being brought forward. It's a pretty substantial number for one meeting. There's a lot of communities in the state that would love to see that kind of development, and here we are with 1 addition. Also, just like to point out that, and I think it was in your packet, are the memorandum of understandings associated with the plats, and those are the documents that support what happens in those subdivisions down the road. So that would be where the requirement for sidewalk comes in, the requirement for the builder or the developer to build the streets and ensure that anything that's not completed with the approval of the final plat is either bonded for or that they're providing a cash escrow for those improvements. And I don't need to remind the council this, but sometimes we've been getting a lot of comments related to the city's completion of streets and subdivisions. If you recall, the developers build most of the roads in the community as a part of their developments. We just make sure that they're consistent with the city standards. So anyway, these are the agreements that are in place. So I don't want to belabor that issue. I just wanted to kind of point that out. This time of year, we usually get a big push on final plats so they can get the improvements in and provide lots for development over the winter.
In typical years, we've had, 150 or so lots for going into December. What is it this year?
I don't know where we're at. I can look though and provide a little
I think it'd be
information on that.
interesting
Sure.
statistic to hear what we're going to go into this winter season.
Yep, definitely do that.
It's been 150 to 170.
Yeah, we usually get a big push right now.
Yeah.
They've been working hard to get the roads in, and then they final plat ones so they don't have to post so much surety.
Right.
So, yep,
I think that'd be good to hear.
absolutely. Item number 7 is not starred, but I wanted to bring it forward. I failed to get that starred for conversation. But this is a contract with RDG for design services related to the Neighborhood and Indian Creek Master Plan update. If you recall, we talked about the growth that's occurring out on the northeast side. This is the contract that would provide an update to that area from a long-range planning perspective, but also provide for the zoning that would be consistent with that neighborhood plan. So if you recall, RDG was the original group that did that project, and so we'd bring them back in to do an update and then provide for the zoning. We'll talk a little bit about that area on the agenda here next, if there's some to understand kind of where we're at. So, item number 8 is kind of where we're talking about. 8, 9, and 10 are all related. So on Thursday there'll be a public hearing regarding the land use map amendment and the rezoning of property for the development identified as the Ridge. The area highlighted in red on the screen is the property that we're talking about. It provides for 59 single-family homes, 51 duplexes, or 102 units, and then for a total of 161 residential units. Now, this is the overall plan. The final plat is about 30% of the overall at this point, and that'll probably start. You'll maybe see some grading over the winter if temperatures are good, but the development will likely start in the spring. As identified, this is the area. The south red line really is. Let me just see if I can get this to work or not. But my cursor's not showing up. But that's Tower Terrace Road, that curved line along the bottom. So The area that we're talking about needing some zoning is south and east of that line, and that is the commercial part of the neighborhood at Indian Creek. There is a comprehensive plan amendment. The area identified with the dotted red line is proposed to go from single-family detached to two-family attached, which provides for the duplex zoning, which for all intents and purposes is generally pretty compatible.
Tom, is that little triangle at Indian Creek Road and Lucor, is that is that commercial rated? Has that
Indian
been
Creek,
zoned?
right here?
Yeah.
That,
There's a farmhouse and a couple of
Yep.
buildings in there.
I believe that is R1, as is on the south side. I'd have to check on
I
that.
haven't asked for any special zoning on it, is what I'm asking.
They are R1, and no, they have not.
Okay.
Go back to
To be honest, just flat out tell you that would be extremely difficult to get rezoned to something commercial. I think you would have, let's just throw out Tower Terrace Road zoning. Once you have the property around it being developed, you're going to have a real hard time. As much as some people would probably like to have something out there commercially, that's probably not the location. Yeah, the city owns the south half, that's correct. Yeah. So the zoning that's proposed is R2 and PDR. The PDR is for the duplex. And I would like to just spend a couple of moments talking about this. The R2 went through Planning Commission with no real issues or concerns. It's single-family residential, didn't expect so. The PDR went through the commission. There is a request to reduce the side yard setback from the traditional 7-foot to a 5-foot. So it'd be a 10-foot between units. Traditionally, it's 14-foot. The commission did not support that proposal, and their recommendation to council is to not support the 5-foot setback that's within the PDR. That being said, the place that they made the recommendation was primarily related to the site development plan. So they approved the PDR, but they did not approve of the site development plan with the 5-foot setback. What staff would suggest, and to think about this, is if there is no support for the 5-foot setback, that it just go to R3. That reduces the time frame for review. There's no additional review process for the city, and it would just be straight zoning. I do want to bring that up with the developer between now and then, but on Thursday, I think that's just something to consider. The only reason that I believe it went to PDR was for that side yard setback reduction. So keep that in mind. And what I'll likely do is talk to the developer, and then I'll place 2 ordinances on the agenda for Thursday, if that works. So I'll talk a little bit more about it on Thursday. But this is what's proposed. You can see this is a build out of the entire subdivision. The single-family lots are on the north. The red line just outlines the phasing for the project. The duplexes are a little tighter and the heavier. You can see the actual units. These are just the proposed units that they have. They've built a similar development in Cedar Rapids. So this is actually their preliminary site development plan, and you can see the units proposed on the site.
Tom, when you say a 5-foot, is that 5 for each unit, so it'd be 10 total?
10 total, correct.
Okay.
Yep. Anyway, that's where we're at. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the comprehensive plan amendment as proposed and as identified, and then the PDR was also supported, but the preliminary site development plan and the 5-foot setback was not. So I guess that's the recommendation moving forward. I'll have a conversation with the developer between now and Thursday, but likely there'll be 2 ordinances, one for the PDR and one for the R3, if there's a desire for the council to not accept the Planning Commission's recommendation then you would go to PDR. If there is a desire to support it, I would likely think that they would want to go to a standard R3. So we'll put it on both ways on Thursday, and then I'll update the council on that conversation. Does that make sense? Before we get
Tom on this?
No, I just would say to just throw it out there that I would not support going down to a 5-foot. They keep it at 7, just so you know.
I mean, that's what everything else has been, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's a standard setback.
So if
I just want to be able to have a conversation with the developer. I know they're here tonight, but I think we'd rather have a conversation with them before we move forward without that.
Okay, keep going then.
I did want to just briefly note that item 11 and 12 is a motion from the BPAC, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, to proceed with an application to the Metropolitan Planning Organization for additional funding related to the 10th Avenue Side Paths project. So we'd be requesting additional dollars to support that project. I think when it was presented a couple years ago, you guys got the information. There wasn't enough funding to go with the standard 80-20 split. So I think the split was, city had more responsibility. This is going back and getting us to the 80-20 split on that project when it moves forward. So on Thursday, we'd like a resolution supporting that so we can prepare the application and go to them. So all it is reducing the city's obligation to that project.
get more money.
Getting more money. There you go.
Where would they do this on 10th Avenue? That's pretty narrow in some places.
Oh, from going down to Walmart.
Oh, it'd be on the backside, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
You're not talking about through the residential one?
No. Number 14
I keep forgetting that's called 10th.
is property acquisition proposal. The city received a request to purchase public right-of-way and actually public property. It should be both from the city. The area is highlighted in the red here, the yellow, and the blue. The city owns. We acquired the property that's highlighted in red, if you recall. I know it seems like a long time ago, but that was the Whetstone Group building, if you recall. So their building was right in this vicinity. This blue area was when we started down the road of developing the roundabout. There was a concept in place, so we acquired the property in blue from John Fillmore, owner of the VIP, and you can see there is more property associated with that. We ultimately did not need all of the property that we acquired because the design changed at the engineering phase. And then the yellow, that is the alley between Ziogiano's and what was, I guess, formerly known as the VIP. The owner of Ziogiano's is requested to acquire all of the property highlighted from the city. And we received that some time ago. And there's been a lot of conversations out here regarding private acquisitions. And some of it has been kind of held up because they want to know what the city's position is on selling of parcels out here. And in talking at the staff level, it would seem that until we have our corridor plan updated or until such time we have a proposal, that we would not want to start selling off pieces of property without some kind of a project to drive that sale of property. The red area here is currently a parking lot that the city owns, maintains, and is usable by Ziogiano's currently. And I think they're actually the primary user. And the alley provides service to both what was the VIP and Ziogiano's property. The blue area is currently not improved. There are people parking on it. It's not probably the prettiest piece of property that we own, and there's some gravel sections. But at this point, it's just very difficult for us to say this would be a good sale if we don't have an overall project, and it could ultimately be detrimental to the redevelopment of the entire site. So just understanding there's a lot of people looking at the property, and what, Lon and I have talked about is if someone came in with a proposal, that would be the time we'd want to react to a proposal to determine if that's in fact what we would want to do, is sell the property. So what I'd like to do is get some formal action from the council on Thursday, directing us to either sell it or not to sell it, and then we can provide some feedback to the owner of Ziojanos.
Didn't we also have a letter from the person buying the VIP
Thank you.
opposed to the sale?
Absolutely. At the last city council meeting, Annette Perry had identified, she owns the property on the south side of 6th Avenue.
Right.
And she was saying, hey, let's not do any of this until such time there's more information.
Which makes a lot of sense.
She bought the VIP, right?
Right.
Or one of her
Supposedly.
Yeah.
Sure. There's been property discussions as I understand it.
So is the area not highlighted to the south of the blue? Is that just right of way? What is that?
This is city property.
Okay.
Yep. So this was a part of it. It's very difficult to see this, but this trapezoidal piece at the bottom.
Yep.
That was the alignment of the railroad. So the bridge.
Sure.
Was right about in, my cursor disappeared. Right about in here.
Doesn't the trail go through there too?
So that's where the bridge was. So if you remember, there's a huge embankment, and so yes. Yep. Thank you. Yes.
But Tom, isn't there a trail along there?
So the trail is on this side, so the trail will come up and go off in this direction.
It won't go along 6th?
Yeah, so there's, you can't, it's the grayish, wait for it, there you go. That's where the trail is.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've retained that, and what we'll do now, and Dan and I have talked about it, there's other things pressing, is we'll go through and we'll clean up all these lines and do the plats to show what's right of way and what's property parcels. I've kind of identified, there's some arrows in here, how, if you were going to make lots, how they would kind of come together. But we'll bring that back at a different time. But I think what's critical at this time is that a response be provided to Eli regarding the property acquisition, and that way I hate to see us not make a decision on something and then it kind of tie up some development of projects. So anyway, I'll put some action on the meeting for Thursday, and we can get some solid correspondence back to the.
He wants to buy the red, the yellow, and the blue.
Correct.
Ziojanos people do. They want to buy all of that. We could make that part that's curved, we can make that a dog run so they could chase the cars.
There you go.
The roundabout.
Right. So.
I think it'd be a good parking lot too for like a trailhead or something.
But that's also been the conversation internally, is that parking lot, I mean, right now the only person that would benefit from it currently is Ziojanos, and but ultimately when that's a build out, that with the trail, and that could be a trailhead, it could be advertised as a trailhead, it could, which would benefit both him and the city. I mean, people using the trail would use the restaurant, so and we could it could be that we extend that parking area down this way, and a new business or redevelopment of this could be here. So there's, we just like to see what's being proposed before we sell property like that.
I would think he would be happy that the red section is city-owned and he doesn't have to maintain a parking lot next to that he gets to use. But
what's key is it's actually paved, Paul.
Paved, yeah.
I noticed that, Thomas.
You had to rub that in. Wow. Any other questions for Tom then on planning?
I had one last item, number 15.
Oh, okay.
At the last city council meeting, Councilman Brandt asked for an update on what's going on with 1007th Avenue and also the 1204. Staff's been a little bit concerned about the fascia board being covered, removed, and now you can see the exposed brick and the deteriorated support beams there. So anyway, it's really become an issue. We kind of convened as staff, and we're not seeing a lot of work done, so we did ask for a report, independent report to be done on the facade and the condition of it to determine what we should do. I'll get to that in a minute, but I just, there's a lot of questions out in the community. I think there's been a number of folks contacting us saying what's going on. So I just want to kind of clear up some of the things, and I'm going to put this in a memo to the council for you on Thursday to receive and file. It'll be public information. But, I'm just going to provide a brief synopsis. I'll try to be quick. So the owner of the building, Capital Commercial Division LLC, was a former owner. They've transferred title to the property recently, but they bought that property on March 26th in 2013. So we've been at this for quite some time with the current with Capital or subsidiaries thereof. The city received building planners and entered into a TIF development agreement in May of 2014. There was a lot of terms as a part of that agreement. Some of the key ones that they would invest $2.1 million. They would agree to a $1.3 million assessment for the project. And in return for that, there would be a $550,000 forgivable loan that would be paid out over time. So they would receive dollars over a period of time as they made investments in the building. One critical piece to that was that the building would meet the standards necessary for historic preservation tax credit. So they didn't have to receive the tax credits, but they had to meet the standards, and we would need documentation of that. We've never received that, just so the council's aware. We did hold up the last $100,000 for that. Just saying we haven't received it, and therefore we have provided the $450 consistent with the terms of the agreement, but we never paid out the final $100 because we didn't see any progress amounting to that. In addition, that agreement said that the project needed to be completed by December 31st of 2015, and clearly that's not accomplished. So the minimum assessment, because we've been at this for so long, has hit the tax rolls, and the estimated tax payable to all jurisdictions, so total tax payment, is almost $45,000 a year, starting in the current tax year. So they're still paying in the rears, but that's where it's going to start here soon. So currently, there's an open permit on the project for interior repairs, and there's been work completed on the second story. All those units have been redone on the second story. But there is an open permit for what's the signage identifies as the Bistro 319. There has been no permit issued for the exterior work. So we've always kind of waited on that historic preservation tax credit conversation to occur before we said, okay, go ahead and make improvements to the exterior so we can make sure that it's historically correct. Now, there have been maintenance has been done on the exterior. They put up some of that thin set brick in different areas, which we won't need to go into that. But we're still awaiting that kind of a review process before that work can be continued. There was some permitting allowed for tuck pointing, which would be maintenance, and that there was some portions of the building. If you recall, we had the issue of the dumpster and the parking and location of the work being completed, and some of the building was tuck pointed, but certainly not what was originally expected, which was the entire building, or we wouldn't be where we are today with the exposed brick. Just to change a little subject here, the owner has a lease with Bistro 319. as an established business. They were supposed to have that business open about mid-September. I've spoke to the owner of the business on a couple different occasions. They were previously located in Cedar Rapids. They closed their business anticipating an opening in mid-September. That didn't happen. So now we have a restaurant owner who was expecting to open in Marion, and there's no building complete for her to open in. So obviously there's some issues with that. So that's something it's difficult for us to be involved in, but that is an unfortunate circumstance that does exist. It's also been brought to my attention by the property owner that Community Savings Bank is no longer providing payment for work completed and has called for a cure of the loan. So in other words, there is a breakdown in relationship between the developer and the bank. And that has been confirmed by contractors who have contacted us for payment because they're wanting to know how they can get a hold of certain people. And the bank has indicated they're not paying any of the bills at this point. It's also, just as a side note, the Marion Water Department has not received payment for service there, and as such has pulled the water meter from the site. So there's no water to the to that space at this point. As I understand it, there's also not electricity to that unit either. On August 8th, the building of 2017, the building was transferred to Owen Block Holdings LLC, and there are outstanding liens against the former name, so there's certainly something going on there. There has been limited to no work completed in about the last 4 weeks, and even before that, I would say it was pretty limited. I'm sure the building department can give you an update on the inspection records, but it's upon inspection of the building of the unit that's been where the permit is for Bistro 319, the space is left in substantial disarray. There's large openings in the floor, and there's been some temporary shoring that's installed in the basement. Both of these create dangerous situations. The shoring is sufficient, but certainly not a permanent solution. But needless to say, having that kind of a situation in a building, and especially if there's not work being conducted, is pretty, I guess, a little bit scary. An inspection by the fire department, Chief Crable gave me a pretty detailed synopsis of the issues that they have, including that there's a risk factor for fire in a vacant building. If you have open holes in the floor, it provides for faster transfer. The building can go up quicker. And there's some concerns with residents in the same building and above the unit. So that's certainly something there is some concern with. I do know, and it's been shared with me, that there is a response plan in the event there is an issue for that. I do know of 2 local contractors that have contacted me for payment, and I do know that there's liens on the property. All this being said, I think it's important that it's understood that this is out of the city's hands. This is the doing of the owner. They've got permits. They can do work. Apparently, there's an issue with the dollars and cents. The relationship between the owner of the building, Community Savings Bank, and then the potential business owner, I think, are what are causing the issues. I think we've done everything we can to try and expedite redevelopment of the project. I think that if you look at the development agreement, you can see that. City staff has been concerned about the facade, especially since that exterior fascia board was removed. We provided some time here. I think it's been off for about 3 or 4 weeks. Clearly, nothing's being done to address it, and there's no work being completed of the building. So that became an issue last week, especially as we get into freeze-thaw time. If we get a heavy rain, it freezes. There's potential for some of that brick to pull away. On Thursday, before Thursday, earlier in that week, we all met as staff and determined that probably should be some kind of study completed to see what needs to be accomplished to make sure that it's safe. November 2nd, Knapp Worden, architect and professional engineering, reviewed the existing conditions of brick. The report, which I'll provide to you guys, finds that their structural integrity of the exterior wall is in jeopardy and recommends immediate action to ensure safety of the general public utilizing the sidewalk. So most of the concern from their review of it is that the brick will fall onto the public sidewalk. So I think that's the issue. To this end, we've contacted city attorney, and they are working on an order to expedite the nuisance abatement that exists and the danger to the public. I think we're hoping for that. I don't think it got served today, but we're hoping that it's served tomorrow. We're asking 3 days to respond to that and get us a plan of action of what they're really proposing to have, how they can address it. And that's a critical piece to it. I mean, we just need to know what they're proposing to do. In the event the property owner doesn't respond, that puts us in a position where we got to maintain and ensure that the safety of the residents that are walking the sidewalk are provided, and we would likely need to proceed with some kind of action to do that, and it would likely be repaid. Any of those payments would have to be repaid through an assessment on the property. So, just to kind of identify the issues, I know these aren't real easy to see on the overhead, but if you just drive by, I think folks have identified, but you can see the wood beam there supporting up the brick, and in most cases is deteriorated, is rotten, and that's the major issue. Really it comes down to is that the Knapp Worden report is saying that they need to secure some scaffolding on the sidewalk, put plywood above so stuff falls that it does not hit residents. We'd want to keep the sidewalk open, so you've seen it where the scaffolding where you can walk under it and it can provide for. So we'll be working through that process to ensure the safety. I'll get a report to you on this. I'm going to probably email it out to the council for review, and if you have questions, you can certainly maybe ask them on Thursday. But it's not a great situation, but I just wanted to be able to let the council know that we're working towards a remedy here. And I know Gary stayed through the meeting. If there's questions on specifics, he's probably better off to answer it than I. But that's a little bit of history on the project and where we're at. And I know there's some items out there in the public that the city was holding up for historic review, and that's certainly not the case at all. So, any questions of me? So I'll try and provide a little information on Thursday, but I was hoping that we'd get that served so we could provide an update on Thursday, but we'll go from there.
What can we legally tell people? I get more calls, and this is a item I shouldn't even be asking, I can't vote on, but what can we tell people?
Yeah, I mean, everything that Tom has told you now is all publicly available information. He's going to put it into a report so you can see it. The only thing that I would add that Tom didn't cover is one of the questions you might get is why didn't we seek to enforce recovery of the development agreement or something earlier? There were some things that happened on the historic preservation tax credit side with this project that actually affected another project in Uptown. At the time this project came forward, and then when what became the Coben Hervey project came forward, they were both intending to apply for historic preservation tax credits at a time when the federal government and the state government were trying to figure out who was going to be running the program and how it was going to work in Iowa. So what was about a 4-month approval process is right now at about a 2-year approval process. So we did allow some time for those projects to try to work through that to see if they could meet that standard. Ultimately, even the Barker Financial Project with Tom Franz, who has been doing historic preservation tax projects for more than a decade, was unable to get everything done in time to be able to move that project forward. So that part of it, I don't think we can really entirely lay at the feet of the property owner. There were some things that were provided to us that in fact have turned out to be not true as far as where they were at in the process, that we discovered and verified later. But beyond that, I think everything that Tom has talked about, you can count on. It's all publicly available information. We did contract with Knapp Worden on the structural engineer. Now that we're moving into abatement of the dangerous building, that's a lot different than working with just a regular building permit or even working through the nuisance abatement process. The city has a lot more authority under the dangerous building statute to compel actions to be taken. The choice would come back to the council if the building owner doesn't comply with the terms of the order about whether or not I would recommend at a minimum that we would erect scaffolding to protect the traveling public underneath the front of the building so nobody could be injured. The question then, though, will sit in front of the council is, should we do something to stabilize the front of that building to prevent further deterioration or damage during freeze-thaw cycles? Because if the property owner is non-compliant, we would have the ability to step in and do that. And as Tom indicated, we can assess those costs back to the property so they would get recovered on a property transfer.
Should we close the sidewalk right now?
We discussed that, and one of the things that we were kind of going back and forth on whether just the knowledge that there's a problem there would confer any responsibility over to the city, but ultimately maintenance of that area and making sure that the area is safe still falls back to the property owner, as long as we're following through our process, which means if we stopped preparing the dangerous building order and didn't do anything on it for 2 weeks, knowing that there's a problem, we would probably incur some liability. But just the fact that we are following our process, we've got a plan for putting out the dangerous building order, it's going to have the timeline in it, that responsibility still lays with them.
I understand that, but still, liability aside, we wouldn't want something to happen and someone get hurt, period.
Correct.
So I don't know why we wouldn't shut the sidewalk down until we can get scaffolding.
We were trying to be cognizant of the fact that there's 2 operating businesses in the building.
Understand.
And residents upstairs.
That was the other question too. Is it safe for the residents to be up there?
They didn't put anything in the Knapp Worden didn't have anything in there that indicated that they felt any of the residents were in imminent danger. And rather than close the sidewalk, if you want to do something immediately, my recommendation would be let's get some scaffolding and put that up so that we can keep the sidewalk open and see how quickly we could get that installed. But we wanted to come to council and find out what you wanted to do for next steps.
I would say put up scaffolding tomorrow and assess the property cost.
You know, I asked at the council meeting 2 weeks ago if we could block that sidewalk, and I reminded everybody then about the theater that fell in the middle of 10th Street and how lucky we were that no one was walking down that sidewalk or a car driving by there when that occurred. So it does happen. And as we get water in that old timber, and as it freezes, the windowsills are the only thing holding that up right now. And there's nothing holding the windowsills up. You had the same problem at the Sorg building, a minor problem, but similar. And they put a steel beam in there, just one. Here you're talking about a number of them. But aside from the liability, just to protect our citizens, it just scares the bejeebies out of me. If a brick fell on somebody's head, it's not gonna be a, you know, whether we fix it, it's fixable, but at a great deal of expense, I think.
I agree with Will that I think it ought to be up sooner than later.
Tomorrow if possible.
Yeah. We have to rent it or whatever.
We can do some checking tomorrow and see what's available, whether it be something that we'd have to rent or go out and pick up somewhere and get an idea what something like that would run.
Yeah, I would feel a lot better if there was some protection there. And I think we'll get something back for it eventually from somewhere, but maybe years, but.
Hopefully it sells sooner than, sorry.
Well, I think it's important too that there may be a relationship breakdown between the developer and the bank, but the bank is also going to have some interest in understanding what's going on. They'll be served as a part of the notice requirement, I think, as well, because they have a mortgage on the property. But that may be, you know, once they understand that, it might be something they may be willing to. It's their asset, kind of, as well.
Full asset, yeah.
So anyway, we'll get some quotes and see where to go from here, and kind of keep the council updated.
Sounds good.
About the other building, Tom, the other non-building.
We'll update you on that one a little bit later.
Okay, is that it for you?
Yep.
All right. Administration.
We have 3 public hearings on Thursday for amendments to urban renewal areas. Number 1 and 2 are an amendment to 4 of our urban renewal areas, and that is specifically for administrative professional fees, including legal expenses, as well as Medco support program. So that's something that we talked about previously. No projects are being proposed out of this particular amendment for these 4 urban renewal areas. So moving on to number 3, this is another urban renewal plan amendment for the Collins Road Extension urban renewal area. This also includes admin and professional costs, as well as costs for the Medco support program. But it additionally has several projects that are going to be amended into this amendment as well. So number 5 through 8 are all setting dates for public hearings for those individual development agreements, and each of those you have seen in the past and approved memorandums of understanding for. So would you like me to go through kind of just a briefing of the terms of those individual agreements for your refresher?
And you want additional briefing?
What?
Yep. I'm sorry.
Did you want additional briefings on 3 through 8 or 4 through 8?
Well,
Or questions on them?
not really. Exactly what do we not TIF?
Well, we can only TIF projects that create. We only provide incentives to projects that create a new taxable increment for the city. And so then what we are taking out of, proposing to take out of these additional amendments are fees related to the administering of the economic development program. So that would be any of our legal fees through attorneys that we use for this, as well as administrative costs with the city, and then our payments annually that we make to Medco that support the economic development program.
Well, looking at the amount of the TIFs on these, they're pretty hefty.
Yeah, these are significant projects.
Well, it used to be that you didn't TIF restaurants or bars or private residences or, things like this, and it seemed to be a little more clear because it just seems that there's so many muddying things along. I don't know.
these are only for, this is only for property. I mean, we only consider providing incentives for property and not for particular businesses.
Well, whatever.
Because regardless of if the business remains in that property, the benefit is still there for the city.
Going.
You want me to go through them?
Keep going.
Okay, number 9 is an additional amendment to the Central Corridor Urban Renewal Area. So again, this one includes the ability to take fees for admin and professional support, including legal, as well as the Medco support program. And then additionally, it has 2 development agreements associated with it. Both of those, council has also approved MOUs for. Would you like me to go through either of those?
Yes.
Okay, so SB Coastal is the renovation of a historic building on 10th Street. It's where Bliss Hair Salon currently is, and so that is, the incentive will be not to exceed $22,500 over a 5-year period. The company is investing $288,000 into the structure, and the incentive will be for safety improvements as well as historic preservation improvements. So the Simpatico agreement is for the Dairy Queen, so a new building, the new Dairy Queen that was built on 7th Avenue. This is the last project that will come to council that qualifies under the old revitalization eligibility that was kind of phased out earlier this year. So the base value of this property was $202,000, and then the current assessed value is $355,000. This incentive will be up to $12,000 over a 5-year period.
Questions on that one? No. Keep going.
So the next one is a motion to receive and file the recommendation from the Lost Oversight Committee. So they had their regular meeting in October and then a special meeting in November where these recommendations emanated from. So everything that is included in the letter that you received was included in the draft CIP document, and so it was directed by council per your priorities. The first recommendation is to reallocate funding from Willow Park Pavilions, as that was not a staff or a council priority, to the following projects: Aquatic Center feasibility study in the amount of $30,000, Lyle Park South End improvements in the amount of $100,000, and then the remaining to the skate park in the amount of $15,000.
That was in the memo that was just given out
Yep.
today.
And so then the committee also recommended moving forward funding for 2 parks projects out of existing fund balance. These are already funded, just moving them forward for the depot improvement project as well as Leninger Park Pavilion. And then moving over to the infrastructure side, the committee members concurred with the staff recommendation to reallocate $1.9 million of funding from 3 projects that were not found to be council priorities to the Central Corridor project. And those projects that have funds that are being reallocated are First Avenue reconstruction, 35th and Munier improvements, and then the 44th and Highway 100 intersection. And then the last recommendation is to take $750,000 in unallocated anticipated infrastructure fund balance and also move that over into the Central Corridor project, which was the #1 priority of streets projects for the council.
Now, will there be a requirement for them to itemize what they have spent this $750,000 for?
I can let Dan speak to how he itemizes his projects, if you want to speak to that.
The project is all kept within a file which you've had before, the accounting file, which is all itemized by payment.
But I mean, so that it's accountable, all accounted for?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The auditors approve it every year, so.
Because I'd sure hate to arrest uptown for embezzlement, but hey, what the heck?
No, all of our projects are kept on accounting sheets by payment. You can see any of them at any time. They're reviewed by the accountant, the auditors every year, so.
Okay, thank you.
I guess my question is, are we still spending I call it lost one money, or is this lost two money?
So these recommendations are all out of the renewed loss from 2013, that was voted in 2013.
Oh, so this is the lost two money, I call
Yeah,
it.
we're still spending out of the original loss.
Oh,
That
out of
hasn't
the
been completely
original.
expended yet, but it is all allocated to projects.
Okay. So these are catching up on projects that we had money left over then.
Yeah, this is reacting to the rankings and the prioritization that council provided over the last several months for the capital improvement program.
The 750 is left or not allocated stuff. Is that
Yep.
the remainder? Or
Yeah,
is there anything left?
that's we've been receiving additional revenues above what we've been projecting year over year since the year 2 of the tax.
So it'll get replenished, I guess, for lack of a better word, because if it's still above what.
Yeah, we anticipate getting even more in to come back to you with allocation recommendations for.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on number 13?
I just out of curiosity, the skate park for 15,000, was that just a portion of? That's an additional. Okay. I'll say that seems low for a skate park. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Number 15.
Number 15 is a motion to receive and file a request for TIF assistance. This is for the new dental practice going in on the old car lot over here. As they started working through that project, they did discover an underground storage tank that added about $60,000 to the overall cost of the project to go through and properly abate that. And so they are filing a request with the city to assist with part of the cost of doing that remediation project. Brownfield remediation is considered to be a qualifier, an automatic qualifier underneath the central terms of the central corridor, urban renewal area, and the city's economic development plan. So once it's received and filed by council, the next thing on Thursday would be a motion to direct staff to develop an MOU. So it'll run through the economic development committee. They'll come back to council with a recommendation for what assistance we would provide.
From the renderings that we got, it looks like they have changed the building. They've changed the part that faced the 7th Avenue looks different. See, that's the 7th Avenue view.
Yeah, I got that. The front is the 7th Avenue.
Yeah, it didn't look like that before, I don't believe.
I think they enhanced it a little bit because it was
See,
on
they put
7th
they
Avenue.
put that little piece on it here.
Yeah.
Have you got that?
I'll look into it.
Are you talking the little?
Right here, can you see it? See, that's
I'll look into it, but that looks similar. I can't see the detail, but I'll look and ensure that they're.
I always thought it was just a flat.
No,
just
it
a
had the
window
center
back
section.
there.
It had that center section. Yep. But I recall. I could be wrong, but I'll look and ensure.
Well, I could have sworn all that was a window back there. But anyway, it appeared to me they changed that. But that wasn't anything that they were asking for. I guess that was my.
No, this
It was
is
only
all
for this-
brownfield related.
All that's for the brownfield.
Yep.
Well, that looks different. That's gotta be different.
Is that the next one? All right, and then the next one is a resolution to approve a contract with Liftoff, and this is for Office 365 migration. We're moving from servers to the cloud. This is something that if you recall, we came to you a few meetings ago with the RFQ. Liftoff, we feel, has the best strategy and approach for providing a successful migration for us into Microsoft 365. And while the amount is listed as $15,000, we actually have a $6,000 credit from Microsoft. So to be applied to any kind of planning expenses, so it'll actually reduce the amount to 9,000. The contract is for 15, but we'll get that $6,000 credit.
Would you explain, please, what migration is? I mean, does this thing just take off and go south for the winter, or what?
Yep, so it'll be stored, so we'll be storing our email servers on the cloud, so off-site, rather than having them in physical servers.
I do not think that's a good choice of words. But.
I think you lost her at the cloud. But we'll ask a good question about council. If you're going to 360, will we need to upgrade to
Time to get rid of these old things.
Surface Pros or something? Because I don't know that the iPads support any of that.
Yeah, we may need to. I mean, everyone with an account with the city is included in this migration, so that is something that would have to be looked at individually. And so I don't know what that will look like, if that's, stationary machines at your desks that you can access, or looking at different machines for you to take home. I can't speak to that right now.
Can Paul get it on his flip phone?
Can I get it on my flip phone here?
I don't know if they'll support a flip phone, but
Some more glasses, Paul?
Yeah.
I think it'd be nice to update these for council, because these are starting to get rather old.
yep.
Old
So
technology.
yep. We'll work with the
Before you
consultant
go
to do
to
that.
the thing about this, I would like an amendment placed on Thursday's agenda to revisit Ordinance 1710, which has to do with the changing the amount paid to the council. Like I said before, I don't have any interest in this because I'm not going to be here, but I think that like 2% of $4,800 is a heck of a lot less than 5% of $130,000. So unless the pay for performance also adopts the index thing that is being proposed, or there has been proposed and passed, then this is not right. And I would like to amend the fact that if that index goes down, you'll be making less than what you're making now.
Yeah, we had actually found that. I think Beth pointed that out, so we were planning on bringing that ordinance back to council to correct that.
Okay.
Your Honor, I have an item I'd like, before we go to private session.
Okay.
I went to a library meeting last week, and I found out what I found out for about the last year is that we have more questions than we do answers. And particularly now, and I'm asked by some of the tenants, which I think is a fair question, if there is a timetable, with our new owners and the library and everything that's going on, is there a table of which we can point to and say, all right, by 2019 we're going to be tearing down the mall or whatever? So I would like, Tom, if you could, or whoever does it, to give us kind of a report, kind of like you did on the Made Right building. So we're asked questions, I am anyway, every day, and I go to the meeting and they have all the great intentions. It's a great plan, but when and how, and we have a new owner of the mall. He has to have an idea of what he's going to do with it, because he has plans, and I just wish we could have a report by him or someone to give us a little bit of a timetable on it.
Also, with the Hiawatha doing a vote on their proposed library addition, is this going to affect the readership and the use of our library, since there are a lot of people from Hiawatha that come to Marion?
Our readership is way up, even with the new Taj Mahal in Cedar Rapids. So I don't know the answer to that, Councilman, but
Because, you know, if it's going to make an appreciable difference, then it just seems to me it would be easier to just extend the current library to the west and maybe leave the mall alone and perhaps enhance the front of the buildings or whatever and leave the businesses there because they are taxpayers.
It's not real good use of the land is what they'll tell you. I mean, there's a lot of area there, and that's why Noddle Development is dumping out of those malls. You know, they've been trying to sell that dang thing for quite a while. But I just, you know, we have an owner, and he has plans, and if we had a timetable on those plans, heck, the library needs a timetable on those plans. You know,
Well, perhaps there would be a more fair consideration of that current owner if he left it as a mall. And, I mean, that's a large area for parking. And
For the mall.
Well, for the mall, I realize that, but unfortunately, there are other businesses that sneak their customers in. I've noticed that.
I think that the thing that's held it up is the sale of the building, and I think once the sale of the building has occurred now, that I think it'll be safe to say we can get better scheduling, because that's kind of held up the whole works.
that would be really helpful to us.
Yeah, I know, because we all get asked that, and just about every day someone asks me. So, but anyway, that's a good recommendation for both of you there. So, somebody want to make a motion for the last?
I move to adjourn to executive session.
Second.
Will you read the actual?
Oh, you want the whole thing read? Oh,
What are you doing?
I don't know. Okay, I move to adjourn to closed session regarding litigation and land acquisition as permitted under Section 21.5, subsection 1, subsection C, and Section 21.51J of the Code of Iowa.
There a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Would you give a legal description for this? Thank you, please.
Yes, council members, I have reviewed the proposed material, and it is my opinion that it is appropriate for a closed session under both code sections that have been cited.
Okay, thank you.
Is that what it was?
A roll call, Beth?
Mr. Draper,
Here, yes.
Miss Essel,
Yes.
Mr. Spinks,
Yes.
Mr. Brandt,
Yes.
Ms. Pazor.
Yes.
Thank you.
We're closed for closed session.